And so just like that, MacGyver said, well, how much setback would you give us? So 30 meters to how much will you give us? And he said, well, maybe 1 to 5 meters. Oh, he says, no, it has to be at least 15 meters. So, of course, he's negotiating now, right? So we've got the upper hand at this point. So I said to him, well, how about we put a rock wall along the side of the creek? MacGyver says, well, we could talk about that. I thought that was a little expensive, so I said, well, how about we just slope it really nicely and put some filter cloth along the side of the creek? Oh, we could talk about that. And so the young lad says to him, he said, well, when can we get this done? He says, I want to get this done. And he was willing to pay for a permit. In my opinion, you don't have to do that. But he wanted to get it sealed up so whenever he sold the property, which he wanted to do, that the person getting the building permit would not have to jump through any hoops. So he wanted something in writing from them. And he said that to them. He said, well, I'll fix this up for you. He said, but I want it in writing that this is finished. You're done with it. And they said, yeah, well, if you do what we say here, and he said, the levels are there, because he had got a fellow to do the levels on the property. Now, he was only halfway across with this fill, but, and they said, well, yeah, the fill, we're going to maybe fill some more. He says, I want to fill that the rest of the way across. And MacGyver said, well, we don't care. You can fill as much as you want. And then he says, well, I want to put a reserve pile there to maybe 30 or 40 truckloads in a pile in case we need it later. You can go as high as you want. We don't care. Now, when you're driving into Ashton on the right, going up Llewellyn Road, you'll see that little lot there. It's really nicely done. And I would say they have a setback of about 1 foot with filter cloth. Now, if they had any authority to beat him up, they would have beat him up lots. That's just the fact of it. The very same thing happened a few years ago, and Terry Green was there with me up at Mississippi Lake. A fellow had a cottage, and this was Mississippi Valley Conservation, and they were cleaning the road along the side of the road down from his place, and they had a lot of fill. And he asked them if they wanted to dump it behind his cottage. He had another small lot back there. And they said, great. So he hired a bulldozer, and they brought in quite a few truckloads, probably 50. And it was all humps and hollows, and he didn't take trees down or anything. He just filled in around and filled the hollows up. Did a nice job, seeded out in grass. And some neighbor complained, obviously. And Mississippi Valley came knocking. Now, I brought Terry up with me, and we had a chat with these guys and Jeff Bogarts was there. And Jeff had a pretty good idea when he was there. He came up with the idea that there was a dam in Carlton Place. And Mississippi Valley controls that dam, right? So they're trying to promote this idea of a 100-year floodplain, and they have control of the dam at Carlton Place, right? So Jeff said if you took the dam out of Carlton Place, he said this lake would only be a little creek out in the middle there, because he said I think this man could charge you with flooding his cottage because you put that dam in Carlton Place and it's your dam. And of course these young lads didn't have any authority, but they were sort of stumped on where we were going with this thing. And so after I handed them Liz's paper on conservation authorities, it wasn't this one, it was one before it, and I said, you guys should go back and read that and get some information. But before we got done that, one of the young lads offered, he said, well, how about they were going to make him take all this stuff out. It was going to be a fine, plus take all, put it back to where it was. That was the deal. When they were leaving, they said, well, how about if you pay for a permit, maybe we could talk about leaving it there. And the landowner didn't want to be in court for the next 10 years, and he was looking for a way out. And so we didn't settle it that day, but they couldn't sell it. They couldn't make the deal, but they were offering something, And so he said, we'll fine you $200 and charge you $200 for a permit. How would that work? And so it didn't get settled that day, but that was like on Monday. And on Friday, they came back with, here's the deal. Leave everything there, $200 for a permit, $200 for a fine, and we're all good. There's no rules there that they have any authority over your property, guys, or they wouldn't do that. There's just no way that would ever bend those rules if they were there they could enforce. So I know he paid for the permit. I don't know whether he paid the fine or not, but the grass is growing nice and green on that property right now. And we haven't had any contact with them since up there. But, so down in Niagara, we had, I told you we lost some people over this, and Dave White had a problem with the conservation authorities down there letting the properties beside his place flood and create huge floods on his acres, his farm. And so he blocked the flooding coming to his farm because it was absolutely destroying his property, his fields. And they charged him with obstructing that stuff. And he went to court and lost. And he called me a couple of days after, and it was 4 or 5 days after, maybe more. In that fight, his dad died over the stress of this thing. So he was pretty down. And it went on for a year and a half, 2 years, and his dad died over the stress. And but because of that, Dave said, I will spend every last dollar I have and sell everything I have to beat these guys. And I said, well, you better get out there and make an appeal because you only got a few days to make an appeal. At which point, at time, I didn't know whether it was 10 days or 20 days or 30 days. Anyways, I called Terry Green and asked him, and he said, get him down there right away because you got to get that appeal in, and he can do it himself. He doesn't need a lawyer to do it. Go do it, get her done. And he went down, had a lot of problem with the courthouse because the people at the front desk said he couldn't do it because he had to have a lawyer do it. Bounced him around quite a bit for a few days. And finally, the boss came down and said, absolutely, you can do it yourself. So it got done. Terry won that case quite nicely, and things are good, but Dad's dead still, you know. So those kind of things happen all the time, and we got a story here, and a lot of these stories are on the table here, but they're all also, some of them are in the Landowner magazine. If anybody has their old copies, you can find them in there. And Jim Williams, this just happened a year or so ago. It wasn't the conservation authorities, but it was the Niagara Escarpment Commission, and it was very similar situations. And Jim died in the middle of that one with a new officer coming out to the. He'd only been on the job for 2 or 3 weeks, harassing this man. He was 83 or 84 at the time, and took a heart attack over it and died. But those things are happening constantly, and only because people don't know their rights. They don't know their rights, and these guys are promoting it. And even our municipalities don't know the law. They're believing what they're promoting. You know, people in the system is believing it. Go ahead, Jeff.
A few weeks after that issue up in Mississippi Lake,
yeah.
You were at a meeting over in Pittsburgh.
Yes. Yes. Yes, we were at a meeting over in Stittsville, and over in Stittsville, they ran into a landowner with a fair amount of cash, and they decided to charge him with disturbing a wetland because his tractor was yellow. Therefore, it was industrial, and he was out there cleaning his ditch, and so they charged him with cleaning a ditch. Now, he may well have been cleaning a ditch. It was his ditch. That's his right to do that. But if anybody knows Stittsville area, they got Pool Creek going through the middle of Stittsville. And the railway track used to go up. Am I doing that? The railway track used to go up, and it created, when the railway was on it, they always maintained it. So they had big cement culverts in it. Culverts in it were 8 feet high and 12 feet long, and it kept water even each side. But when the railway stopped and people started using it for a walking trail, the beavers filled that culvert. And that made one heck of a good dam, you know, miles and miles of railroad, and 2 holes through it, and they had her plugged full, and we had those big cranes up in the trees everywhere there as nests, and all the trees died for miles back, right on this property. This guy's property went right back to Old Highway 7, Hazeldean Road. And anyways, he was getting flooded like crazy. He'd do a lot of complaining about it, and couldn't get him to do anything about it, so he was out there doing a little bit. I'm on the clock, and I'm running out of wind. It's a good time. Anyways, they charged him finally with disturbing wetland, and so he went after them and sued them for flooding them and not maintaining the drainage in Pool Creek and letting the beavers build it all up. And you know, there's a nice municipal drain right through the middle of that swamp now, nicely cleaned out and no water. And so the people in Stittsville used to walk up there and watch all the ducks and everything floating up to the side of the railroad bank. They called a big meeting at Stittsville, quite a lot of people there. They got Mississippi boys, the same guys we were dealing with. They got them down to complain to them about draining this big swamp. And one of the young lads, he says, well, you know, we find that people really don't like it when you flood them and they sue you. So people wanted to put the dam back in the culvert, you see. And he says, we find that doesn't work well. People sue you when you do that. So it was an enlightened moment for those guys, and I think it was stemmed from our one at Carlton Place, and it just kept building down the road, and that lawsuit sort of finished it off. Now, I don't say that they're not going to do it to you again, because if you don't know the difference, they're going to run that bluff to no end until they take something on you. Now, but there's people in the conservation authorities. I still believe there's good people in the conservation authorities. I don't want to get rid of the conservation authorities. I think we got to make them do their job and protect us. That's what they're supposed to do, look after the water. But they need to be held to account, and they need to be held to account what their intention of the act was.
Do they need all those people to do it, Tom?
Well, it's like government, Bob. If they need more people because they keep grabbing more power. So as you grab more power, you build a bigger and bigger organization, right? But just 1 second. I lost my thought there for a second, but I had one before Bob interrupted me. The point was, I think we should make them do their job, but respect the property. And I was going to tell you about the Niagara conservation authorities, and they were a very bad group of people. I'm telling you, and I'm not saying everybody there was bad, but there was some bad folks in there. And by the way, after getting beaten down there 2 or 3 times, 3 of them got fired. Over Terry's case with Dave White, they fired 3 people just very shortly after that. And it wasn't just that case, it was several cases. And so obviously they were costing them too much money, you know, and obviously they had broke the law. Even their own, when they got scrutinized, they were breaking the law. But we had one of them down there that's still there. We had them approach our Niagara landowners down there about a month ago now and said, you know, you guys aren't working hard enough. That's what she told them. And she was serious. She said the conservation authorities are really trying to get a hold of the water rights under the property. They're really trying to get people signed up for the water rights. And she said, anybody that has their land patent grant, we won't go near them. She said the only problem is there's only about 1% of the people have them and know about it. And she said you should be working harder to get people informed. So that was coming right from one of their own workers. We won't mention any names because she wouldn't work there very long, I'm pretty sure. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Tom, and thank you very much for everything you've done. Now, a lot of us here have had fines given to us from the ministries and the College of Trades and whatever. Doesn't matter. College of Trades has 4 people, 4 directors. You're the president of the OLA. When do we get our chance to find somebody? Is there not some reasonable thing? We got thousands of members. Why can't we find somebody? I mean, the College of Trades, the ministry people, who gave them the okay to find us?
You did.
Well, I don't remember it.
Well, you got to go back in your files there and find out where you did that.
So when do we get the okay to start giving out fines? Or is there some legal thing that
Why shouldn't you? Because you're a corporation, a single person is a corporation, the same as any of those corporations are. They're just a corporation. They shouldn't have any more power than you do. And they don't in law.
Okay, so the next time the OPP comes to my place, I've thrown them all out, you know the story. So next time, what do I say to him?
Well, the police,
what do I need, a bill book or something?
the police are a little different story. They're running under criminal law, so they are the enforcers for criminal law. They stick to the law better than any of these other groups do. You know, they do because there is like Curtis was talking a while ago about, there is a board for calling them up on the floor and making them stick to it. But you can do that to them too. You can call them up in front of a judge